Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Chicago 16-inch Softball Hall of Fame. And today it brings me another great pleasure to bring in a Hall of Famer that was inducted on October 26th here of this past 2024 into the Hall of Fame. And it's going to be Bob Glosa, inducted as a manager. And we're going to talk to Bob about his career, how this all starts, how it gets to the level where he is inducted and everything else, and another great pleasure to have him here today. We are in front of a live audience today. We have Billy Reedus in our audience. We have Franklin Teen, of course, all Hall of Famers, Mick Balestri, and I think an umpire is here today. Sherman's here today, the umpire. So if Sherman wants to come down here, also, we do allow umpires into our crowd. But anyway, I want to always thank the board for setting aside the time every Saturday between 1:30 and 2 o'clock for this moment, because this is just unbelievable. Be right here in the hall at Forest Park and have guys like the gentleman to my right of me, Bob Glosa, and you look around here, the jerseys, the history and everything else. Before I even sat down here with Bob, I had like a 20-minute conversation with Franklin Teen, who was also honored this year for another award. And Frank brought back some good memories and some people that we both knew. Bob, after further ado here, I really thank you for coming down here today. A pleasure to meet you.
You know what? Nice to meet you, and I appreciate it. I mean, what you guys do here is just amazing. All the time and effort, and Paulie Rowan and Ray Thompson, and just everybody involved in it just does awesome.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like I said, the board and Paul setting aside the time to do this here now for we're going on a little over 2 years that I've been doing it from here, and it's been a lot of fun. I've met some really great people, and I've met great athletes and great stories, and I feel like I've been part of this family for 20 years now too. So it starts for you in the sense of grammar school, right? You like it from the sense of grammar school, and where were you from, and what was the neighborhood?
Vidham Park area, Garfield Ridge. And when I started playing, I had an older brother. My brother was 3 years older than me, and I kind of fell in with his group. I was always the young guy on the team, and I was kind of filling out rosters and stuff like that.
Right.
But it was a game that I spent far too much time playing, probably because one knee replaced. And the other one's scheduled soon, it shows. But, I mean, the people and the relationships you make in this game are amazing.
Amazing.
Yep.
In this, I had mentioned in the, just before you, to bring you in, I was talking to Franklin Teen, and he reminds me of just that little thing that sometimes you forget. It's this ball and this bat, and all of a sudden, you have this passion for the game and you want to do it over and over again. And he's telling me a story that where he was from Chicago Avenue, where, he's catching fly balls with these older guys. And before you know it, they're asking him to play too. And, the rest is history.
Yeah.
What was your first position? Do you remember?
I played first base.
First base.
Yeah. And then
as far back as you can remember.
Yeah. And then I pitched a little bit towards the end, but mostly I would say play first base.
And defensively, did you like playing first? I mean, you guys, I'm sure you had some guys with some cannons throwing that ball where the fingers.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, like my brother, he never got anywhere close to me. I was always chasing the ball down the right field line with his throws, but I mean, I
hope, is he going to be watching this?
I hope not, because he's 3 years older than me. But yeah, no, I mean, I was fortunate. I played with just a lot of great players, and
right.
It was fun.
So. What was that first team where you start to see the competition of this game? Where I know we start, in grammar school, you get through high school. Was it high school? Was it in your early 20s where you start to, you face the teams like with Frank and Billy and Mick Balestri around? When do we start seeing these kind of teams?
Yeah, well, when I started, like I said, I played with older guys all the time, and every neighborhood had their teams. You always had. It seemed to me you always had like the older guys who had a really strong team in neighborhood, and then you had the young kids. That kind of aspired to be like that and stuff like that. We had the same thing in the area, and then and we had a team called Chicago, the first team we started with, and then we turned into we call it the Crush, but then Mickey stole our team name.
Okay.
So we had we had to call ourselves Normandy Crush, but actually so it was there, and then we kind of forced ourselves. We stepped up. We played. We were playing teams. I mean, we'd run into tournaments and play the Whips and all these top teams, and we just it just something and just went from there.
So I mean, to get to see some of those teams, you guys have to have been pretty good in your own right.
I mean, and then once we started to crush the Jinx team, I think we had a bunch of small groups from different teams and different neighborhoods that combined, and I think nobody wanted to let anybody else down.
Got it.
And we gave it our all, and I really believe that early on, especially that we kind of, I think we were looked at as a team. No, like nobody was really crazy about playing because we didn't know any better.
You got it. There's a change here, kind of an innovative change here, where you meet this where you're Tommy Bailey.
Yep.
And of course, Tommy also a Hall of Famer. Where you make now this transition to try to get players to combine to make. Was it more like you guys just said, "Hey, we're going to try to start to do this for next year, that next season"? Or
it was just it was kind of we're in the off season. We were having a few cocktails one night, and we start talking about it, and he kind of I'll give him a lot of credit because he had more of the contacts with some of the other teams.
Got it.
My contacts with the other teams were kind of on a rivalry basis and didn't necessarily like each other, but Tommy was kind of the politician there. And
she was the good guy, good cop.
Yeah. So, and then, like I said, it was it worked out well.
How long did you know Balick go?
Well, Tommy's from the Normandy Park area. We were a little bit out of, but he was always around. He's seen, forever. I think he's 110 years old now. But so I mean, I know he played with the higher level teams with the touch and all that stuff.
All that kind of stuff, right?
So you always kind of knew. He was he worked at the Park District for a while where we played.
So he kind of had like that inside track on things.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're in that.
Exactly.
And this was because you're playing with the Blue Island, Clyde Park. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah,
sure. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, we took a big step. No doubt.
When you take that big step in the bio, I read where now teams are starting to say, this Jinx team is no, fly by night. You definitely figured that it was going to be, you guys could compete at to that top level.
Yeah, I mean, we had some pretty good success right out of the chute. Like I mentioned to Mickey that our first year, the Whips ended up winning the national championship in Marshalltown, and I think we were during the season. I think we were 8-1 or 9-1 against them in other tournaments and everything. And unfortunately, I only lost to them. They came in the national
in the main game. Yeah,
you're playing with that kind of competition every day. You start believing in yourself too.
Sure. Was it hard to? Was a lot of the responsibility put on you being the manager?
Well, yeah, Tommy was a big help too, you know. But yeah, I mean, I always felt that I treated players fairly, whether I was running the Normandy Crush or the Jinx or whatever, even basketball, whatever team I ran. I always thought I tried to treat the players fairly, give them playing time, stuff like that. And then I just felt that they would come around me, even the guys that didn't know me and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think it worked because some of these guys are some of my closest friends to this day,
You know what's interesting, and I'm going to bring it up here today for the first time in all the interviews that I've done with all you guys, managers, players, teams, everything. Let's use you, Mick, Billy, Frankie over here. I said to myself, because I could hear Mick talking about all these teams over the years. He's telling me all these stories. I'm like, what does Balestri bring to the table that they wanted to play for Balestri? But you know what I got out of this? And you just really kind of hit me with that right hook. It's because they knew guys like Balestri, Lentine, Ritas, yourself knew the game. Did you feel that way? That hey, we're going to something here that it's going to be good quality.
what I told the guys from the day I started, I said, listen, if I make a move, pinch hit a guy, do something, and it happens to come through and wins a game, I don't want anybody patting me on the back, but I don't want anybody, if I make the wrong call, stab me in the back either.
Exactly.
Just kind of be fair with me and just, that's kind of the way I always looked at it.
Yeah. But again, you had to make those moves. There's a lot of posturing,
Not all of them were right.
Well, yeah, exactly, but posturing in the day when you guys played was huge because now we don't have the advent of this phone, the Google, the YouTube to go back and look. Hey, did you see those guys last night? At the Clarendon Park, they killed that team, and you didn't have that whole thing. This was a pretty impressive run with Jinx. I mean, we're talking what here? You guys, from what about you think 88 on? How many years of the?
What was before that, Nick?
Was it a little bit?
Years guy.
Well, you made the Jinx in '88.
That's Mick Balestri who's talking now, everyone. So
And played, and I think they played a little more when you were done managing them. They took the team and went into the 2000s.
Yeah.
I know Bobby was there at least until the late '90s.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And
But when does it start? Like 84, 85?
That was Normandy Crush.
Yeah, no, this is probably like 87, 88.
88, yeah, I see here, 88.
Years.
Yeah, 88. No problem. I mean, yeah, they go by so quick.
Yeah.
Who can remember them, right? But I think, like Mick brings up a good point. 88 to 2014, this was an impressive run. Was there a lot of continuity? Like a lot of, you had that same address this team to do what they had to do all the time?
No, that was the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge was I don't want to say you had teams poaching your players, but it's kind of what it came down to. I mean, I look at our national. When we played in the Nationals in Kingman, Arizona, whatever year that
You would have
was.
wanted to.
Yes, you're right.
I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, but
I was there.
I have the picture in my office, and unfortunately, several of those guys are no longer with us. But I looked at the picture in the office, and a lot of those teams, a lot of those guys in that picture had a different jersey a couple years later when they won it. And I mean, it's so. But I was never bitter about it. I mean, it was what it was. They just took the opportunities. I remained friends with all of them. They wanted the opportunity to do it, and I probably wasn't invested as much as I was early on either. So I never blamed them.
But we did have fun at the Hilton Towers that week.
Nick's bringing up another part.
It was a lot fun.
How as a manager, because you're inducted for this. I mean, you're well respected at this. How well did you have to be prepared, you thought, in your eyes, from year to year? I mean, like even in that off season, did you go to say, okay, we need a center fielder. We're a little short on short center. We need a first baseman maybe that's better than me. Maybe you even,
Yeah, no, it was difficult because we never had the real financial backing of a big sponsor. So,
got it.
And a lot of these guys wanted to go to that, and then deal with that. And again, that was fine. I mean, whatever.
But again, you were able to get really good players just because of what you guys put out on the field, right? A lot of here again too, Bob. A lot of tournaments and championships. Any of them stick out still to this day, where you still talk about it to this day? I mean, ones that you won, ones that you lost.
Yeah, no. Mickey brought up one really stings to this day, the Kingman, Arizona thing, and I don't want to get into what happened.
Let's talk about because sometimes the sting of a memory sometimes still it's good. I mean, in the sense of it makes you feel like, okay, you take nothing for granted. We always have that one or two that sits back in our mind, but what do you remember most about that I think I overheard you before we went on camera today. You guys had an 8-4 lead, or was
that was in Marshalltown the year when the Whips came back to beat us in that.
And
but actually, it's funny you mentioned. I think in Kingman, I think we had a 9-5 lead late in the game, and things.
This forward run differential is killing you.
Yeah, we had
I know the 9-5. And what do you remember about it most? I mean,
what don't you remember about it?
We had the bases loaded and nobody out with a 9-5 lead, and we suffered a triple play.
Whoa. Which is a rarity in the 16-inch
Yeah,
game, a rarity.
Big momentum.
And it kind of sucked the life out of us.
Was it a weird,
and the team,
was it a weird triple play?
third to second, first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's more behind it, but I don't.
Yeah.
you know.
All right, let's talk about one because I mean we want to talk about the positive here.
Yeah.
You're the Hall of Famer getting inducted in here October 21st. You remember the one that was like, it tasted good when when you had that beer after that game.
Well, that was every game, but I do want to add, like that year we played. We were in the we went in the loser bracket in Kingman, Arizona. We played 7 straight games on the last day in 105-degree heat.
Whoa!
So I mean, there was some. I was still proud of that thing, but I think our first year was at the Clyde Park had their big tournament.
It was the major in A combo league.
Right, and
Rusty Carlson ran it.
Right, and we went to in the final. We had it was us in the touch for the championship. To determine the championship.
Right.
There was no playoffs, and we had rained out against them early in the season. So when they rescheduled it, they kind of rescheduled us a doubleheader in the same night. We had to win both games, and I thought it was kind of unfair to ask us to sweep the team, but we came out and swept them, and we won the championship that year. So that probably.
It was a tough league, Bobby. Whips were in that league.
What was your biggest thing? You think you were the better manager? Were you the better offensive player? What was the thing that Bob Glosa brought to the table that you were very consistent with? Because to get into the Chicago 16 and Softball Hall of Fame, you've got to really be known for something. And what do you think, Bob, was your biggest attribute?
Well, I think early on when I was young, still seems like so many years ago, but when I was young, still I did have the opportunity to step up and play, and I chose to stay with the neighborhood guys and do that. But again, from the like the biggest attribute, I just think I try to treat the guys fairly and form relationships and be friends with the guys too, and
right,
and kind of be able to separate that on the field versus
exactly, because if you don't have that, a lot of teams over the years that I've seen and heard, and of course played at the level that I played at, they crack and they crumble. Yeah. So, but that's great that you were able to do that. And did you feel like players came up to you all the time and were looking for that advice from you?
No. But and I didn't want it again.
Right.
I didn't want to. I don't want to project that I knew anything more than anything
exactly.
Else, it's a game. Come on.
Yeah, right. I mean, and a game, we're having fun. Sometimes we take it too much to a different level. You won numerous Metros, ACA Nationals. Again, just can you name, even if you want to name some people here today without offending anybody, if you could tape 10 to 15, 20 guys off that helped you.
Guys, when you made the team, that'll fill that question.
Well, I mean,
about what you had.
Yeah, 10, 15 guys, right?
Frankie Mione was played left field for a long time. Kevin Miller,
Larry Downs.
God rest his soul. Larry Downs, Tommy Bailey kind of brought him. He was a neighbor,
sure,
from Norman, and we just kind of unfortunately threw him into the fire. And but obviously things worked out very well for him. Wally Gennady, Petey Zates, Richie and George, Richie and Kenny Barron.
They had Richie. They had
Kenny
Barron, Terry Kennedy.
Yeah.
TK.
Yeah.
And Duddleston in the middle. Georgie Kodadek. And
it's a lot of guys
who am I missing?
Mike Cam. Mark Dizzy, so I mean, we
had a stud.
We had talent. That's why you asked about an attribute. I think probably if I had to pin it down, is I was smart enough, barely, to surround myself with some of the greatest that ever played this game, right, and made my job easier.
Yeah, of course, right. I got to ask you. You played in many charity events.
Yep.
Any of those that stick out? I mean, that's still something here too that you know, I didn't see in a lot of the bios of a lot of people. So
Yeah.
what made you guys do that?
Just for the love of the game, man, because most of those charity events were snowball tournaments and things like that for the
Right.
March of Dimes and stuff, where we're out
Which
there
was
like,
very nice. Yeah.
we're out there like idiots in the middle of winter playing softball and stuff like that. So, you know, I mean, it was great to raise money, but, you know, I don't want to pat myself on the back. I was just wanted to
But again,
find an excuse to get out there and play softball.
you know, Bob, there's a consistency here. How you managed, how you did the like bringing up these charity events, how you talked about your teammates. You were very consistent in what you did. I mean,
Yeah,
which is
I tried to be.
yeah, which is so. I got to ask you because then I'll go back to the guys out here to ask some questions today.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they'll ask you a question, one or two
I'm
questions.
worried about one guy.
Yeah. Well, we're just- So, question is this, here you do this managing, you played, love of the game, you're out there 5-6 nights a week, right? Basically, gotta have that understanding wife, understanding family, of course, you know, that comes into play. I know sometimes we all talk big, oh yeah, now my wife's just gonna have to handle it, but you gotta have that right fit. When you get this call, and I don't know who called you, if it was a board member, if it was Frank or Paul Rowan, how did you feel when a Paul Rowan makes that call to Bob Glosa?
I was.
Were you shocked?
Oh my! I'm not shocked. I mean, overwhelmed. You know, it was me and my wife were sitting in the living room when I took the call. You know, I just you know, talked with Paul for a minute, and then she was like, "Who's that?" You know, and I told her, and she was like, "You know, it was really cool."
And those memories are rushing back of all the things that we just probably brought up, you know,
Yeah.
from that start with
Yeah.
in the beginning to the grammar school to now.
And I'm going to tell you something. My wife was understanding. We had a few battles over the years. I mean, I tried to, you know, we go to tournaments, and I would, you know, I try to bring her with the kids
Sure.
and all that stuff, and
Sure.
and we all did all our teams always had kind of like a family thing. We tried to, you know, when we went to Kingman, Arizona, we brought up like Timmy McCann. We brought we handled his kids and on airplanes and all that. So we brought everybody. You know?
You just it just brings back just that great, especially when you get that call from Rowan. I mean, it's everybody I've talked to has got a different setting of when Paul calls, where they're at, what they're doing, and it's always that same thing. Boy, you know, I didn't know it was coming, or you know, you're shocked and everything else. Besides brothers, family members, still to this day, you can be at that light, or you're just daydreaming, watching TV, or just sitting around by yourself. Who are some really early mentors that you still think about to this day? Early mentors in regards to the game and how you came out.
Yeah. Well, again, I was 3 years younger than my brother, and most of the guys playing on those teams were even older than him.
Oh, wow.
So I was kind of like, you know, 16-year-old kid playing with, you know, grown men.
Yeah, you were the rookie. You were the
And again, you know, all these neighborhoods had different level teams. You know,
Sure.
you had your top team from that area. So I was out there watching them when I wasn't playing, you know, and stuff like that. So there were a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know,
Any player that you aspired to want to be when you were watching this?
Mickey Balestri.
Okay.
We make heads too many times.
Yeah.
We had many beefs.
You guys had a half-hour conversation before my podcast.
We had many beefs.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Oh,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go over to Frank, and then we'll end it up with Mick maybe later to hear, and then Billy. Frank, anything you want to say to Bob about his career and what you knew a little about it, or is there something that?
I think basically what we had shared today was the role model for these younger people to understand how important it is to keep the game going. Here you have a good example of someone that's sacrificed a lot of time, probably a lot of money, a lot of family stuff to keep the game going because he loved it. It was a love of the game, and it produced what you see being in the Hall of Fame. But I think that message has got to be clearly conveyed to these younger teams today to say, hey, there is a future if you follow what this guy did.
Well, I think this organization has a lot to do with that, because honestly, there was a gap there for years. where you didn't see anybody playing this game, you know, and I think you guys had a huge role in bringing that back.
But Billy, anything you remember about Bob? I don't know if you ever played with him or anything that you want to ask him.
Yeah, I never bought around.
Yeah.
You always complain about that.
But we have Billy Reedus here in the audience. Go ahead, Bill.
What's, beside the game itself, what's the most favorite thing for you outside of the game itself, just being with the guys? What's the favorite thing for you over the years?
Just the longevity, the fact that I'm still very, very close with a lot of those guys, you know. Unfortunately, lost too many of them. But you know, I consider a lot of, you know, my best friends, you know, and guys that I didn't grow up with, you know, that we, you know, I met from other teams, and we, you know, when they came to play, we played together, and to this day, they're my best friends.
And always it looks like that always comes out with you guys, yeah?
Yeah.
Mick, last question. We'll leave it up to you here. We got about 40,
Last question.
45 seconds. We got about
3 hours.
we got about 45 seconds.
Probably about 40 years. I met the middle 80s.
Sure.
Staying ahead at Normandy Park. Couple crazy memories is the year you started your team was the year after we played each other in the championship at Normandy. And if you remember the headline in the Southtown Economist, Crush versus Crush,
Right.
winner gets to keep their name. Just to that, yeah. Because the next year Normandy Crush was gone.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to just the comment that was made. Well, fortunately on our end, we did win the champion, but that's not what the comment is about. The comment is.
Yeah.
In the fall, I get a phone call. He might not even notice. I get a phone call. There's a new team forming. They're gonna be called the Jinx. 6 of your Crush guys are there. I said, what? Okay, and they hung the fucking phone.
Oh, that's
They hung the
okay.
phone- they
A
hung the
little
phone
louder
up.
because I know it's.
They hung the phone up. 38 years later, to this day, I still don't know who made that phone call.
Oh, wow.
I tell the story all the time, and I don't know if he called me or not.
That's the first I heard of this.
I-
Honest to God.
I get a call, and that's when at the meeting you had Jojo, Crowley, Lococo, Samuel Senni, Kenny Mecki, Mark Manizzi. Am I about right? Dennis Arrigo.
Real. Yep.
Okay, so that was seven of my starters.
Some of your starters go to the Jinx. You did a great job of recruiting.
To this day, it's a true story.
Wow, that's a great story,
Never
Mick.
got informative.
Yeah,
And
Mick, that's
who called me?
that's a classic.
Nobody ever admitted it,
I did
and I
not know
still
that.
don't know. They told me and they hung the phone up. So when I found out, I just tell me, I said, I got no strings around nobody's neck.
Yeah.
Funny thing was, I think he ended up with 3 of them, but he ended up with 3 of the better.
Okay.
And the
You
other,
just told
one,
the joke.
the other ones left because I think you had too many guys. But that was one.
You still did your homework.
The other thing, you know, we're similar from managing down to playing against each other, neighborhood teams.
Yeah.
Bringing them up, longevity, staying together, camaraderie. With us and them guys.
Yeah.
If we played 40 times, it might be 20-20.
2020.
You
That's
know,
all close.
maybe one year they beat us 5 and we won once. Maybe the next year we beat them 4 and they beat us
The
twice.
parity. Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing about them guys was when they started the team, they went right to the major level with the Jinx. They didn't
Okay.
start at the A ball. They went right to the top of the
To the
line.
top of the line.
And that's why by the 3rd year, they're fighting for championships in the nationals. That year.
Sure.
Were you with them when they beat the Rebels in Joliet?
No.
When you played with 9 guys? You were just done then.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. They had 9 guys and they double dipped the Rebels in Joliet.
Oh, wow.
Indiana State. One of Les Duncan's first tournaments in Joliet. When they made it.
Listen, not that I because I know we could go on here for a long time, but I want to really thank you for coming out. And you know what I got out of this today was your middle name should be consistency and a great work ethic because it shows that
Can't even spell that.
yeah. Well, I'll write it in your bio. You did a great job, and again, congratulations on being inducted and great meeting you here today.
Thanks for doing this and all you guys.
Yeah, these guys are great. Thanks for our live audience, to the Franklin team, Billy Reedus, Nick Gillespie Sherman. He's watching something down there, but appreciate you guys coming in, and we'll see you next Saturday with another great guest here at the Hall, 2 p.m. Forest Park. Be here.